Because Maya's story wasn't just about a ruined evening. It was about centuries of doors closed, questions whispered, and dignity stripped from people who asked for nothing but equal treatment. It was about a pattern that continues, quietly, publicly, relentlessly. And here lies the truth. Racism does not always wear a uniform, nor does it always shout. Sometimes it hides in polite voices, in selective hospitality, in the silent agreement of those who choose not to speak. Maya left the hotel not as a victim, but as a mirror, forcing everyone watching to confront what too many still deny. So the question is, when you see injustice, will you stay silent like the staff who turned away? Or will you be the voice that refuses to let hate go unnoticed? Because one story may start in a hotel lobby, but its impact can echo far beyond if we choose to listen. The lobby that once felt like a battlefield now stood in silence. With cameras rolling, the hotel staff had no place to hide, no excuse strong enough to mask what the world could now see. Within hours, the video spread beyond those walls, shared, reposted, amplified. What began as an attempt to humiliate one woman became a spotlight exposing the prejudice woven into everyday spaces. For Maya, the wound was real. The sting of being told she didn't belong would not fade easily. Yet, in standing her ground, she transformed humiliation into strength. Her voice, once dismissed in that room, became undeniable when echoed by thousands who saw themselves in her story. The hotel's walls could no longer contain the truth. This was bigger than one lobby, one staff, or one night. Maya looked around the room, her voice rising with every word. "If you want me gone, you'll have to explain to the world why." The staff froze. What had begun as their attempt to humiliate her was now a stage, and the audience was growing by the second. The question was no longer if Maya would fight back, but how far she would go. Her voice shook, but it was steady enough to cut through the silence. "You think you can throw me out because of the color of my skin? Because you decided I don't belong?" No one answered. The silence was the answer. Then her phone buzzed, cameras lifted, guests began recording, their lenses capturing every sneer, every dismissive shrug, every hateful glance. The power shifted in an instant. The breaking point came in the middle of the lobby. Maya had returned from a walk outside, hoping the fresh air would calm her, when the staff stopped her at the door. 3 employees stood waiting, arms crossed, their voices sharp enough to slice through the air. "Ma'am, we're going to need you to leave." Immediately her chest tightened. "On what grounds?" They didn't answer. Instead, the manager stepped forward, waving her ID like evidence in a courtroom. "We've decided your booking was suspicious. You don't belong here." His words echoed across the marble floors, loud enough for every guest nearby to hear. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Maya felt every eye pierce her, some with pity, some with curiosity, some with silent approval. Her blood boiled. This wasn't just humiliation anymore. This was erasure. Her mind raced. She had paid. She had followed every rule. Yet here she was, being treated like a trespasser in a place she had every right to exist. "Maya Thompson," the manager repeated, lips curling as though the name itself were suspicious. He scanned her ID slowly, then announced loudly enough for others to hear, "Sometimes guests use false bookings." The restaurant went silent. Maya's pulse hammered. Was he implying she didn't belong here? That she wasn't good enough to afford this place? She could feel the stares of strangers digging into her skin, burning her dignity to ash. She tried to hold her ground. "My payment cleared. I've done nothing wrong," but her words bounced against a wall of cold indifference. The manager shrugged, dismissive, as though her existence was an inconvenience. The injustice was sharp, cutting. Every fiber of her being screamed that this wasn't just about a reservation, or a table, or an ID. This was about who they saw when they looked at her, a black woman they believed they could belittle, question, and discard without consequence. Maya clenched her fists under the table she never received, heart pounding with rage and disbelief. She had 2 choices: walk away in silence, letting them reduce her to nothing, or fight back in a way none of them would forget. She didn't know it yet, but the next move she made would shift the entire room, sending shockwaves through the hotel staff who thought they held the power. And when she did, no one would be able to look at her the same way again. Later that evening, Maya headed to the hotel restaurant. She dressed simply, nothing extravagant, just wanting dinner. Yet as soon as she walked in, the waiter looked her up and down before telling her there were no available tables. Behind her, a white couple entered. They were seated instantly. She swallowed hard, anger mixing with humiliation. She asked to speak to the manager. That's when the whispers began. Staff huddled together, exchanging glances that said everything their mouths didn't. In the elevator, Maya's stomach twisted. Was she imagining it? But when she reached her floor, things only worsened. A staff member followed her down the hall, eyes locked on her every step. When she turned to ask if there was a problem, he simply muttered, "Just making sure everything's okay." Her hands trembled. Okay for whom? At first, Maya tried to brush it off. Maybe the staff was just having a bad day. Maybe she was being too sensitive. But the unease refused to leave her chest. Every time she looked up from her phone in the lobby, someone behind the desk was staring, then pretending not to. When she finally asked for her room key, the clerk hesitated, flipping through papers as though double-checking whether she belonged there at all. She forced a smile. Reservation under Maya Thompson. The woman behind the counter barely glanced up. "We'll need to see your ID again." Maya blinked. She had already shown it at check-in. Still, she slid it across the counter, heat rising in her face. Behind her, a couple walked in, and with no hesitation, they were greeted warmly, their keys handed over without question. The contrast stung. Maya loved traveling. It reminded her of freedom, of independence earned through every ounce of her effort. She had grown used to blending into new cities, finding comfort in the small routines of unpacking, ordering room service, and curling up with a book. Tonight, she imagined, would be no different. Just a quiet night, a soft bed, and silence. But the smiles she expected weren't waiting for her. Instead, she noticed hushed voices near the front desk, the way glances lingered too long, the subtle edge in their tone when they asked for her ID again. Something was wrong, though she couldn't quite place it. She brushed it off, telling herself she was imagining it. What Maya didn't know was that this stay would be remembered, not for rest, but for a confrontation that would strip the mask off hidden prejudice. It was supposed to be a simple weekend escape. Maya, a hard-working professional, had spent months juggling deadlines and late nights, finally gifting herself a rare break. She checked into the hotel with a smile, carrying nothing more than a small suitcase, and the hope of a few quiet days to rest. The lobby smelled of fresh coffee and polished wood, the kind of place where guests should feel welcome, safe, and invisible to the world's chaos. She just wanted a quiet night in a hotel, nothing more. But within minutes, whispers turned into stares, stares turned into insults, and suddenly her dignity was on trial. What should have been the safety of four walls became a stage for humiliation, a place where respect was stripped away because of the color of her skin. Yet what happened next shocked everyone in the room, and it's a moment that still echoes louder than the hate. Would you have stood silent or spoken out?